Being in Sri Lanka in the tsunami in 2004, it completely rocked that world. I was completely safe, gave me PTSD from survivor guilt. It really made me think about why I had survived and what was I supposed to do with the gift of time that I had been given. I remember doing my very first talk, which was a TEDx talk, and it was horrible. It was so bad I emailed TEDx and got them to take the talk down after I became a professional speaker, because people kept finding it and I was like, that's no longer a good representation. And then somebody handed me a check for a month's salary for a 45-minute talk, and I was like, wait a minute, this is very interesting. Within a business setting, it's really about being bulletproof and like presenting this flawless argument. But I realized that I had to kind of shed that armor in order to become a speaker who could really connect emotionally. And this giant guy walked up to me and said, my wife heard you speak last year and she quit her job because of you. The best thing she ever did, let me buy you a drink. That's better than a standing ovation.
Welcome to the Beyond the Keynote podcast. I'm so excited today because we get to talk to Afdhel Aziz, who is a global speaker and has so much experience in different areas that I'm not even going to talk about right now because I want him to talk about it during our conversation. Welcome to the show, Afdhel. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Carmen. Looking forward to the conversation.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to the conversation too. So let's go back to the beginning. I'd love to know, a high-level overview, I guess, of your life growing up and what led you to become a speaker. Like, what was the moment where you thought, oh, I need to spread my message. I need to get in front of audiences, and it might be to help them. You tell me.
Yeah, sure. So a little bit of background. I'm originally from Sri Lanka. I grew up there, left when I was 18 to go study in London. I lived there for 15 years and then New York for 9, and I've been in Los Angeles for the last 9 as well. So that explains a very strange accent you're about to hear. That's a kind of a mashup of all of these different places I've lived in. And so really the first 20 years of my life, I was working for large multinational corporations. I worked for Procter Gamble and Nokia in London, worked for Heineken and Absolute Vodka in New York, and all the speaking I was doing was really, presentations and things like that were from a business perspective. So I was kind of, speaking to convince, to make a business case, to convince a CFO, to make an investment. And it was only when I wrote my first book, which I co-wrote with Bobby Jones, who's my dear friend and business partner, a book called Good is the New Cool that came out in 2016, that I really started to think about speaking. The book was really kind of a call to arms at that point for my fellow brand marketers like myself to think about the values behind their brands and their companies, to think about doing good just as much as being cool. That's the title of the book.
Great. Love it.
And I remember doing my very first talk, which was a TEDx talk in Brooklyn, and trying to take the message of the book and turn it into a keynote. And it was horrible. It was so bad. I was sweating profusely. I was stammering and stuttering. In fact, it was so bad I emailed TEDx and got them to take the talk down.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
After I became a professional speaker, because people kept finding it, and I was like, that's no longer a good
representation.
What I do. But I have to thank that experience, because it's what gave me the courage to think about speaking as not just as a way of getting the message of the book out, but as its career by itself, and so I quit corporate life January 1st, 2017, and I kind of jumped ship with about 6 months of savings. And 3 months later, I was giving my first professional keynote, March 2017. It was the IEG sponsorship conference in Chicago, and I had a great experience with it. And then somebody handed me a check for a month's salary for a 45-minute talk, and I was like, wait a minute. Okay, this is very interesting. And so that really kicked off what has now been like almost a 8-year journey of being a professional speaker, speaking around the world, and really speaking about this message of purpose as it pertains to business and as it pertains to people and leaders and
Yeah.
individuals as well.
Wow, what an incredible story. I think we need to dive back into some of what you just said, because I'm sure there'll be lots of people listening to this that could learn a lot from your experience, especially the TEDx experience. So now you're obviously extremely successful keynote speaker. Back then, that was the first one you'd ever done. What do you think, on reflection, you could have done better in preparation to set yourself up for success in that talk that you didn't do?
Well, the big thing I had to learn to do was to be vulnerable on stage. And I think that's where, when you speak within a business setting, it's really about being bulletproof and like presenting this flawless argument and just being completely letter perfect. But I realized that I had to kind of shed that armor in order to become a speaker who could really connect emotionally with audiences. And so that took a long time to figure it out. Would you agree, Carmen? Like, that's one of the biggest things to learn?
Yes, I was just thinking, so I've done a lot of work with people in corporates over the years. And even when, so I do a lot of private work with GMs, CEOs, MDs, often because they're being asked to speak at conferences and they really don't want to. And so, but they want to look good when they're up there, so they end up getting some coaching. But I have also run very small workshops with only 6 people in the room, because I think when it comes to speaking, it's just so important that you actually have to get up and do it. You can learn all the theory in the world, but if you don't try and implement that and practice it, it's not going to make you any better. And I work hard to help people let go of themselves and just be in the moment. And I'll say to people, you're presenting right now. And I know that this is called presentation skills, but I don't want you to present. I want you to talk to me. I want you to have a conversation with me, and for me to feel engaged in what you're talking about, because I feel like you're talking to me. And so I even think, and I agree, that in the corporate setting, there is this sense that you have to be bulletproof, and because you're up there often, trying to pitch to the board for something, or to get your people to get on board with a new direction or whatever it is. And I still think, though, that when you can be a little bit more vulnerable, even in those settings, and show that you're human, then you can bring people along with you, more than when you keep this sort of facade that I'm presenting right now and I'm very professional. And so I love that the advice that you're giving is that you needed to learn how to be vulnerable and how to just be in the moment with your audience.
One of the great pieces of advice I got from the coaches at TEDx, which I still give to people who are thinking about the space, is a really great 3-part phrase about how to structure a message around the hurt, the heart, the help.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've ever heard about this structure, but it was
makes
something
sense.
really,
I haven't heard, but it makes complete sense. It's the pain, the feeling, and then the solution, basically, is what you're saying.
It's the hurt is a moment of disruption, of trauma, of something that happened just to really kind of break your belief or your self-perception, and in one of the things I do in one of my talks is I talk about being in Sri Lanka in 2004 when I kind of experienced the Asian tsunami, and how profoundly that shifted my worldview, and was the beginning of really me thinking about my own purpose in life. And I can see when I speak, people starting to put their phones down, people starting to look up, people starting to dial in, because they're hearing the truth. And they're hearing somebody speak about something from a very raw and vulnerable and emotional place. And I do it very deliberately to signal that something different is about to happen on stage. It's not somebody who's coming out and saying, as you say, look at me, look how amazing I am. It's saying, no, I'm going to talk about something real and messy and human. And then the heart is your emotional reaction to what happened. Like, what was the kind of result of you going through that experience? How did it change you? And then the help is, here's what I've learned on this journey that I want to share with you that I've learned.
Yes.
It's a very simple structure, like a 3-act structure. And whenever I have, friends or colleagues who come to me and say, hey, I want to talk about something, I immediately give them this homework and say, this is a very easy structure for anybody to lean into. And then that really helps you start on that note of emotional vulnerability that human beings just want to connect to, when they hear it, it.
Such great advice, and I think, and it works for every situation. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that with the audience. I'd love to hear more about your experience with the tsunami, which would have been horrific, and how that did change your worldview. I think you said it changed your worldview. So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so as a kid, entering the UK, for the first time with a Sri Lankan passport and, no connections, I really had to kind of work my way up the corporate ladder and, learn how to kind of fit in and blend in and do all of these things. And so working for these companies almost became part of my identity and became part of how I succeeded in life. And being in Sri Lanka in the tsunami in 2004, it completely rocked that world. I happened to be there for my brother's wedding, and what was supposed to be a happy occasion turned into this massive tragedy. I was completely safe and unharmed in the middle of this catastrophe.
Good.
And it gave me PTSD. It gave me, PTSD in the form of survivor guilt. And, it really made me think about why I had survived. And that question really made me change my entire perspective to think about why I had survived and what was I supposed to do with the gift of time that I had been given, And so that, I realized now, was like the beginning of the journey to take me away from the corporate path and be on the path that I am now, which is really helping people find their purpose and also helping companies find a way of being of greater impact in the world as well.
That's amazing. And so, how long have you been doing that?
New work? Since 2017, when I quit my job, and that was the last job I had in corporate life. That first book led to me setting up Conspiracy of Love, which is the consultancy that went on to work with Adidas, Sephora, Coca-Cola, Gap, all these major companies around impact, around helping them figure out areas of impact that they could, invest in. And it took me on a remarkable journey as a speaker to go around the world and speak about this topic. And that's where, it has worked extremely well to have 3 books that I've now written with Bobby, to be able to speak about those books and those different topics, and then have the consultancy be the way that I could actually help people, bring those ideas to life.
So tell me more. I love the name Conspiracy of Love. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it comes from a speech I saw somebody give where, it was like a commencement speech at a college, and he said, we are all products of a positive conspiracy of love between our parents, teachers, neighbors, and friends, who all conspired with love around us, sometimes even when we didn't know that they were doing that, to help lift us up and to help us get a start in life. And I love that sentiment, and I bought the URL.
Good on you. Because you're in marketing and branding, yes.
And I didn't know what to do with it. In fact, at one point it was going to be like an electronic music project. I was like, oh, that's a cool band name.
Okay. That's cool. You can still do that,
Yeah, it'd be a hard payment, but I could do it. But, so then, fast forward to 2017, I'm speaking about this topic, and I'm speaking inside these major companies who said, well, can you come help us with this thing you've been speaking about? And so I had to set up a company, and my tax accountant said, what are you going to call the company? And I said, well, I've got this URL that I bought, and let's use that. And it turned out to be accidentally perfect as a metaphor, because great brands are conspiracies of love. Great companies are conspiracies of love. And if you can harness that love and turn it into positive impact, I think there is a huge potential, in being able to help the world. So it was accidentally perfect,
I
in the
love
end.
that. Oh, so good. Do you have, and it's okay if you can't name the company, but a case study that you can talk us through to give us an example of the type of work you've been able to help a company do when it comes to the conspiracy of love?
Sure. So we've worked with several Australian companies. We work with Cotton On Foundation. We work with
Yes.
A2 Milk.
Uh-huh.
And each time it's really about either helping the company identify its purpose, vision, and values, like what does it stand for, or
Yes.
identify an area of impact that it can invest in. So last year we worked with the Gap.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Dixon, the new CEO, came in. He hired our team to come and help articulate the purpose of Gap Inc., the company which is bridging gaps to create a better world. And that really was the starting point of him being able to reinvigorate that company, and start that journey to say, this is who we are, these are our values, this is our identity. We work with Sephora. It's an incredible company. It's all about creating worlds of inclusion in beauty. And so, for example, this year, the team were helping in the UK to run pilots around neurodiverse shopping. So making
Okay.
stores welcoming for people who are kind of neurodiverse, turning down the volume and the stimuli, to make a more welcoming environment. And so each company is
Amazing.
different in terms of the area of impact. We've helped companies invest in racial justice and education and food insecurity and arts and culture programming. And so each time it's like a Rubik's Cube to say, okay, this is what you stand for and this is how you can make the world better.
Wow, what amazing work. That's incredible. And it's so true, thinking about walking into malls and huge shopping centres, and it's bright lights and noise, obviously from the crowd sometimes, as well as, various music that might be playing around the shopping centre. And sometimes if you walk into a store and they've got softer lighting and if the music's calm, really it does change your mood. And if I flip us back to keynotes, that can make a huge difference to a keynote too. We were talking before the show, and I was telling Afdhel about Illuminated Story and how we help blend traditional keynote speaking with theatrical elements. And there's some of the things you can do. You can use music and lighting to really help the mood and the story that you're telling at different points within your keynote show. I call it a keynote show when we start blending theatre in. So I love that you're doing that with retailers and huge companies. Let's move to the business of speaking. I remember earlier in our conversation you said you left this big corporate world and you had 6 months, pay to be able to make money out of the new business that
Yeah.
you set out to create. It reminds me of my story because I did exactly the same thing. I was in corporate for 18 years and worked my way up through the company. And in the end, you're on a pretty good salary. And, probably similar to you, I had the car, I had the phone, I had the computer, everything was paid for, and the good salary and the bonus that came through. And I also had 6 months where I thought, I have 6 months and then I have to make this work. I have to make money. And you mentioned that you got a speaking gig and someone gave you a paycheck at the end and you thought this was pretty amazing. So that sounds like a really great start. There must, well, maybe not. I shouldn't say there must have been. Were there challenges along the way? Did you have to dig in at certain times when maybe you weren't getting as much work as you wanted to, or was it all smooth sailing for you and you just got booked quickly?
Oh, good Lord, no, no, it was hard. No, that was may have, in hindsight, may have been a delightful aberration, because this. When you start, you have to put in the reps. You just have to go out
Yes.
there and speak as much as possible, speak for free, speak sometimes to like 10 people in front of you. And I think that's where, because I believed in the message, I believed in
Yes.
the idea that I was putting forward, I didn't mind it,
Mm-hmm.
and I would literally fling myself around the world, getting on planes, flying to Europe for 48 hours sometimes to go and do a talk because I believed in the message, and sometimes doing that for not very much money, but doing it because
Yes.
I had to build up a reputation and a profile, and
Mm-hmm.
and so it's not for the faint of heart, and I would say to people, look, they're not paying me to speak, they're paying me to travel. They're not
Yes, so
paying
true. That is so true to begin with, for sure.
They're not, they're not paying for the 45 minutes on stage. They're paying for the 45 hours it took me to fly there and back in a
Yes.
horrible seat and go and stay in an airport hotel and do the
Mm,
talk,
yes.
in sometimes in not very glamorous places, But
Mm,
to me, as somebody who had a family when I quit, my son was um, he was 3 years old, right? And so
yes.
the determination to make sure that my family was financially secure
Mm,
gave me the drive, alongside with the belief and the message, to just go out there and do what I had to do.
mm-hmm.
And at my peak, I would be speaking like 30 or 40 times a year, in different
Yes.
places.
Mm,
So, yeah, it looks very glamorous on stage, but it's deeply unglamorous. And, and I think that's really where you have to really believe in what you want to put out there and buckle up, because it's going to be hard.
yes. And what were some of the things that got you through the slower times or the tough times? I know for me, I would go for a walk because there'd be times where I'd think, okay, how am I going to make money next month? Like, I have to make money next month. And I also had family, two boys, and that there was something inside of me that, because I always ask myself the question, do you want to go back? Do you want to go back to a job? Do you want to go back to corporate? And the answer was always no. It didn't matter how bad things got, the answer was always no, because I knew that what I was doing was right. And as you said, I believed in the mission of what I set out to do, which was to illuminate people from the inside. So you would have come across this as well in business. There's so many smart people out there, so many people that have these amazing ideas that should be shared with the world, but they don't have the skill set or the want to light themselves up from the inside and share that out to the world, which can absolutely be learnt, as you've learnt along the way too. So what was it? Was there anything that you would do to help yourself through some of those tough times to keep going?
Well, I was very blessed with a great team around me of people who believed in me. I had a wonderful speaking manager in the first 3 or 4 years, Nadia
Mm-hmm.
Larinci, who was the first one who said, "You could be a professional speaker, and I will help you do that." And
Brilliant.
she and her wonderful team around her, those are the people I called when I got to an airport and the flights were canceled. I was stuck in the middle of nowhere, going, "Wow, what the hell do I do?"
Yeah.
There's every time I fly through Miami, Fort Lauderdale, I always stop and look at a particular bench that I had to sleep on one night because all the flights
Oh,
were canceled because of a massive snowstorm. And that
yes.
bench is like my, touchstone. It's like, hey, remember that's the stuff you had to do just to make it.
Yes.
So the thing that got me through it was the people around me who helped me
Mm.
kind of on that journey, I think, for the most part.
Brilliant. So good. It reminds me, what we're talking about reminds me of a quote from Steve Jobs where he said that you just wouldn't be in business if you didn't love what you were doing, because you'd be insane, because it's so hard when it's hard.
Yeah.
And I listened to that one day. I'm like, that is so true. You'd have to be insane to want to do this to yourself unless you love what you're doing, which clearly you do. So, and creating a speaking business is not just about the speaker fees that you get when you speak. If you relied on that, you wouldn't have a particularly robust business. And you've mentioned that sometimes in the beginning you need to speak for free or for low fees. And sometimes even as an experienced speaker, you can make choices where you think that's a good thing to do because of what could be created on the back end of that talk. So talk us through your ecosystem. You've mentioned already you've got books, you've got the company, you're doing workshops. How do you use speaking to drive the whole business?
Yeah, that classic ecosystem of book speaking consulting, is not new. Plenty of people have done it before. I think, we were able to really leverage that ecosystem where somebody would read a book, they'd book me to speak at the company, and then I'd speak at the company, then hire me to consult or hire us to consult. So it's a beautiful kind of funnel that worked really well, and then those people would move to different companies and they book me to speak again, and et cetera, et cetera. So it worked really well. I will tell you the thing I wish I had done earlier is build a really great CRM at the center of everything from the beginning. Really paid attention to who was booking me and, having a database to go, here's who they are and here's how I can stay in touch with them. LinkedIn is pretty good. I have about 30,000 followers in LinkedIn, and that's a very good system as well because it follows people when they move. Yes. But I would have invested earlier in making sure I had something really powerful, which enabled me to stay in touch with people who booked me before and say, hey, this is my new talk, this is my new book, so that I was able to leverage those relationships, and kind of friendships that I'd made a lot earlier on. I think that's one piece of advice I would give to any speaker.
It's a great piece of advice. And you need to make sure that with that amazing CRM you have, that you actually feed it with the correct information and use it well, because any CRM is not effective when not used well. I agree. It's so important. It is a business. As you said earlier, people see the bright lights and the fun and the result of everything that sits behind speaking. And when you're running a speaking business, it's like any other business. You've got to do the marketing, you've got to do the sales, you've got to, run a robust system behind the scenes that allows the business to happen. It's not just that speech that is making the business happen. Yeah. Speech is very important because that's a huge connection piece with audiences, with people that you might not even know are in the room. Have you ever had that experience where there's been someone in the room that has surprised you, that's led to other opportunities or business, and you didn't think that would have happened?
All the time. I get people who reach out on LinkedIn. I go, how did you find me? And they say, I saw you speak 5 years ago at this thing. Yes. And I remembered you. And so that blows me away. I sometimes I can't even remember the occasion, but obviously yes. I made an impact on that person, and so speaking begets speaking. Every speech has the potential to beget more speeches, right? And I think that's where, really staying in touch with people who you connect with. So I always put up a QR code and say, hey, this is my LinkedIn. If you want to stay in touch, please do that. Or if you'd like this entire presentation, click this QR code, and all of that momentum built up at the end of the speech then can flow into staying in touch with somebody. We do a Good as a New Cool newsletter, which goes out to about 30,000 people each week. A lot of them are people who saw me speak. And so there's a way of giving them value, right? So not promotional messaging, giving them useful things that I really believe in. My mantra is serve, don't sell. Really think about how you can be of service to people and trust that that will create positive energy, a positive
Yes.
kind of inflow back to you.
You're attracting, not pushing things onto people. Wonderful. Any other advice when it comes to running a speaking business?
I think it's all about the team. I think, and I'm blessed with a really great team of people who look after me, who help manage all of the things I'm not good at, like numbers and detail and
So tell us about your team. How many team members and what are their roles? What roles do you think are important to have in your speaking team?
Well, about half my business comes from speaking bureaus. So I'm represented by about 8 bureaus internationally and I have wonderful relationships with them. And so that's where, I make sure to stay in touch with those folks and they know what I'm talking about, what my kind of specialty subjects are as well. And then I have an in-house team which also manages all of the direct response bookings that I'm getting, and then who also help with everything from budgeting to CRM to travel and logistics to, hey, I need this presentation polished, and so I would really say invest in building a team around you, and making sure that you support them as much as they can support you.
Yes. Yes, and I mean that comes down to leadership as well, doesn't it? So again, demonstrating that you're running a business, you're not just the speaker, and so you're leading a team that is supporting you behind the speaking.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Let's dive into the actual talk now. I've got an acting background, so I believe in rehearsals 100%, and I know for sure that you would never spend the money that it costs to go and see a professional theatre show if you went and saw the first rehearsal, because it's very different between what you see in a first rehearsal versus the end product. And keynotes are similar in that you need to practice before you get out on stage. So talk us through, and it might change over time because if you are delivering the same keynote over and over again, potentially there's less practice that has to happen over time. But talk us through your preparation and maybe after that dreaded TEDx talk that you did that you got pulled down. I'm sure there were lots of lessons that happened and how has your process changed over time?
Yeah, so I've tried lots of different approaches, to develop new talks. I have 3 talks that I do, and I know they're kind of evergreen talks that I can adapt depending on who I'm talking to, whether it's a particular sector, whether it's technology or finance or whatever else, and also linked to these 3 topics I talk about, which is what I call, values-driven storytelling, like how can, companies tell stories about themselves, personal purpose, which is the latest book that came out last year. This is the good as a new cool guide to personal purpose.
The colour.
And
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah, we wanted to make it really fun and not intimidating.
Cool.
And so I spend time. In the past, I've hired coaches to help me workshop a talk into being, to stand it up on its feet as well. Other times I've kind of incubated new talks in existing talks.
Yes.
So I'll start and do something and then there'll be like a 10-minute section where I'm trying out something new, and I'm confident about the rest of it that I can kind of use it as a jumping off point, and I think that's where also, for me, it's really all about stories, and the way I approach thinking about it is that I'm telling people my story, who I am, the journey that I've been on, stories of people I've met along the way, and that's where, I write for Forbes, which gives me a great insight into meeting people who are doing really amazing things, entrepreneurs, change makers, leaders. And then finally trying to link it back to the story of the audience, right? And so it's really kind of like joining those dots. And what I'd like to do is, it's funny, the way I write books now is by doing them as talks first.
Ah, okay. That's interesting.
And so it's almost like live workshopping where I'm like, oh, let me tell you this story and this point I'm making. Oh, nobody got that. All right, ditch that.
That's not going in the book.
The book.
Great idea.
or if I tweaked it like this, so suddenly they understood. And so it's become a very efficient way of writing books as well, to turn them into talks first and then write them as well. So yeah, I would say there's no one size fits all process that I've done, but I do think it's important to invest in yourself, in hiring coaches, in hiring people who can help you get better as a storyteller, as a performer as well.
Brilliant. And so a lot of what you just spoke about was the building of the message and the content. Once you've got that, once you've got the story you want to tell and you've got the structure, do you have a process for actually practicing the performance of it before you go on stage, or do you just go out there and see how it goes?
I sometimes do that in very kind of, how can I put it, like low pressure audiences. Like, again, going back and doing it with a bunch of students who are not paid to do it, and who, by the way, can sometimes be the most brutal audience that you speak to,
It's, the younger someone is, the more honest they are, because they haven't learned yet that they're supposed to, say something in a certain way. I can imagine.
My motto is be brave enough to suck at something new, and so I will go and do it with an audience and go, okay, let me iron out the kinks in real time. But I'll tell you, it's really interesting, going back to performance. Last year, I worked on a kind of a passion project, which is to make a music album.
That's awesome.
Which is super fun. I recorded a whole album and put it up on Spotify, which is fun.
Do you play a musical instrument or sing or...
No, nothing. That's what was so terrifying about it. I did it all here in this studio in the back of my house.
Okay.
And, you can look it up. It's the artist name is Saint Royale.
I'll write that down. Saint Royale.
Saint Royale. The album is called Letters on Spotify. I didn't do it because I want to suddenly turn into a musician. I did it as a creative challenge, as a little exercise. But one of the things that really helped me as a speaker was learning to use my voice and doing vocal warm-ups.
Okay.
And so now, if you see me speaking, in a convention center, for the half an hour before I go on stage, you'll literally see me in the back, kind of walking around with headphones, doing vocal warm-ups,
Good.
And that was a game changer, to go out and have a voice that was really kind of ready to go. Again, something I didn't learn from corporate speaking, but which has been a game changer, as I professionally do this.
I have a specialist voice coach that I work with and I bring in for certain private clients that I'm working with. And she said to me, so she's a professional theatre actor and singer, amazing singer. My goodness, she has the most incredible voice. She builds voices. So she talks about the fact that you can create the voice you want from scratch. You're not just born with the voice you want. Anyway, one day she said to me, do you know Harry Potter? The books Harry Potter and the show. She said, because I said, I'm working with some corporate clients this time. They've got no performance background. They're not speakers. They're corporate people who just have to speak. And they, most of the time, don't like it. It's just something they have to do in their job. She's like, oh, that's okay. I've worked with muggles before. I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, the normal people, the muggles that don't do all of these voice warm-ups and realise that your voice and your body is an instrument when you're performing. And so it's very foreign to people in those sorts of roles. And obviously it was foreign to you to start with, to have to think of your body and your voice that way. And, you'd never run onto a sports field as a professional athlete without having warmed up your body first. Yet, as speakers, sometimes you're running onto stage and you really haven't warmed yourself up. So then what's happening? You're warming up while you're performing, and you're probably reaching the peak halfway through the actual keynote, whereas you could be at the peak from the get-go and be ready to go. So love that you did that, and so interesting how you learned that lesson. I'm going to have to look up that album on Spotify for sure. Do you have a favourite song?
Don't expect too much. It's the
Okay.
well, the whole album is called Letters because it's letters to my family. You know, it's like letters
Ah,
to
beautiful.
my father, my son. It's like so. It's all about kind of things I always wanted to say to them. You know, so yeah, it's meant to be
Ah,
listened to as a collection of letters. You know,
that's so. I'm
yeah.
looking forward to it. I'm sure it'll be amazing. Have there been any moments on stage where something has not gone right and you've thought, oh, and in the moment you've had to come up with something else or cover it up so the audience didn't know that something had gone
Um,
wrong?
I think there's always like technical hitches and glitches which you have to kind of get through. I think as long as the audience knows you're talking to them and being honest with them, I think they'll help you get through it. You know, the
Yes.
most interesting reaction I ever had. Uh, it's funny when the beginning when I started like being a speaker, I was like, I want to get standing ovations. I want people to be like, yeah, like that at the end of it.
Okay.
And it happened a couple of times, but one time I'd finished a talk and I was at this conference in Canada that I'd spoken at like 3 years consecutively. I was in the bar after the speech and this giant guy walked up to me and said, are you Afdhel Aziz? And I was like, yeah. And he said, my wife heard you speak last year and she quit her job because of you. And I was like, okay, what's about to
Is
happen?
this a good thing or a bad thing?
And he clapped me on the shoulder and said, it's the best thing she ever did. Let me buy you a drink. I
um,
was like,
so good.
I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But I was
Oh,
like,
goodness.
that's better than a standing ovation. I made somebody
Yes.
think about their life and they decided to do something about it. And it's like, so from that point on, I
Yes.
was like, that's my goal is to really make people think about their lives and their purpose and what they're here to do. And I'd much rather have that than any standing ovation, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. I love it when people reach out. Sometimes, it's years later and they'll say, oh, I just wanted to message you and say that thing you did 5 years ago in my coaching session, I've just done this and it's made me achieve that. And you think, oh, wow. And for someone to take the time to come and tell you as well.
Yeah.
So that's amazing and so glad that it was positive, given that he was such a big, big guy that was talking to you.
Yes.
Let's move to what's beyond the keynote. What's next in keynote speaking? If you could elevate your talks, for instance, and maybe even blend in a little bit of theatre, seeing that that's what we do here at Illuminated Story, what are some things that you think you could do?
Well, I've been thinking about going and doing stand-up comedy as a little
Yes.
test here in LA. I have friends who run like open mic nights and comedy nights, and I want to weave in more humor into what I talk about. I feel like um, that's a string that's missing from what I do, and I think that's where I've been kind of putting together, as they call it, like a tight five, like 5 minutes of just like
Uh-huh.
stuff. And I think that's where at some point I'm picking up the courage to go and just do like 5 minutes at an open mic night and see if I can just make people laugh. Like
Yes.
I know I can make people think, I know I can make people feel. How about, what if I can make them laugh as well? And how would that change
Yeah.
the chemistry of what I do?
Well, it would definitely be a great tool to have in your kit of tools to add to your speaking. So people will often ask me, should I be funny? Should I tell a joke or should I do this? And I'll say, well, I don't know. Are you funny? Because if you are funny, let's use it. But if you're not funny, let's not do that. It's not going to work. It's not going to land on stage.
Yeah.
And, it's a skill you can learn. So what an amazing idea. And again, it's showing how brave you are to continue to, you write a music album. You're going to go stand on stage and do stand-up comedy, which is pretty hard, I believe. I haven't tried it myself. And yeah, when you can add some humor and have the audience just have a great time at the talk as well, it makes a huge difference.
I think I'm obsessed with storytelling in all of its forms. Like that's the common thread, whether it's books or speaking or music or stand-up comedy or I'm really fascinated by how stories move people, you know, and learning how to be a storyteller in different mediums. It's almost like learning different, you know, techniques or different ideas and reapplying them, you know. So it's really about weaving all of these things together over time to become a better and better storyteller. That I think is my obsession.
Yes, and so powerful. And I'm sure for anyone that's listening, you've heard it 1,000 times before. Stories really do matter, and people feel through stories. They remember stories. It resonates with them. One of my clients, he's a professional rugby coach in South Africa and was a professional rugby player. We're working on his keynotes at the moment, his keynote shows, and he's got a pretty tragic story from when he was only 7 years old. And I've helped him craft that story and bring the story out, because what he was doing prior, he was already speaking to lots of corporate audiences, and he's got so much richness in his life story, but it was like a laundry list. So this happened and that happened, and then this and then that, and then, you know, I was with that person, and these were all big famous sporting people that the audience would be so excited to hear about it, but it's like they've missed it because it was presented like a laundry list. And it's been really challenging for him to really dive into these stories and slow down and realise that he was actually presenting 3 to 5 keynotes in one, and we have to break them up because people also can only handle so much information at one time. And if you truly want them to get the best out of you and get the best out of the experience and the message you've got to share, then sometimes less is more. And it's about breaking it up into different shows, like you've obviously done with your 3 keynotes.
Yeah.
What else do you see? Have you seen, so in terms of the future of speaking, is there anything you've seen others do while you've been on the road? You probably see other speakers from time to time at conferences that you think, wow, that was cool.
Well, I'll tell you in general, I think in the age of AI, speaking is about to become even more valuable.
Yes.
I think that the more and more of our lives get turned over to, you know, artificial intelligence or screens, like there's a counter effect, which is listening to somebody live on stage in front of you speaking will become even more precious and even more valuable. I don't know how else to say it, you know. And we will just crave it as human beings, you know. And so I think in general, I think it's one of those things that is going to be hopefully harder for AI to replace. Who knows, you know? But I think the more human and authentic that we can become as storytellers, the more that there will be people who really crave it. So just a general kind of, you know, perspective on it.
It's a different feeling. I studied both performing live theatre and acting for camera. And I mean, there are so many powerful movies out there that move you, and I love movies. And there's nothing replaces, though, live performances and that in the moment, real live connection between the audience and the performer on stage. It's different to what any screen can ever. It can't replicate, I don't think, that feeling. So I agree with you that AI is amazing and there's so many cool things it can help us with, especially in business. And the humanness of us is what's going to be extra important moving forward, including humans communicating from stage. In saying that, I think there's some cool things that could be done to... so I'm writing my own keynote at the moment, and I'm bringing different sort of characters to life that I want to use some form of technology to have almost talk to me back in a dialogue when I'm on stage with them. Haven't figured out how to do it yet. Yeah. and when you look at AI and video at the moment, it's just not there. So images are pretty spot on most of the time. Like sometimes people don't pay attention and miss the mark, and there's an extra hand or something happening there. But it's pretty good, pictures and images, static.
Yeah.
As soon as you go to video, because I've had colleagues send me things and say, "Oh, Carmen, this is cool. Like, we can create sales training. And it's going to be really fast. And look, this is an AI person. I've just fed it the script." And I'll say, "Oh yeah, but it like does this twitch with its eye like on repetition every few minutes, or it's not quite there yet." And it probably will continue to improve and get there, but it won't replace the connection. But it's the connection between audience and performer is so strong.
Yeah.
Have you ever played with music or sound or lighting or anything like that with any of your keynotes?
Not as much as I should, given that I'm really passionate about music. I use a lot of video in my keynotes, and so that's where I find, really incredible video can move people emotionally, but I do want to try and weave in more music and, more theatricality into the performance. I think that's where it's on my list of things to explore for sure.
Okay. And do you have a favorite keynote? You've got 3 core keynotes that you do. Do you have a favorite, or do you love them all the same like your children?
The one that really connects with people, especially recently, is the one about how to find your own purpose, your personal purpose, and I think that's where, somebody once said that was like water in the desert, and I think that to me is going back to why I do it. I really want people to be inspired to think about their life and, the time that we have left. And so the other ones are more about business and strategy and things like that, which are useful. But yeah, I think that's the question I think so many people are asking themselves, like, why am I here? And what am I here to do? And I love putting that question into the air and seeing how people answer it.
Yes, so powerful. And because you've done it, like your audiences would look to you and think, "Oh wow, he was in these huge corporate roles, highly successful in the eyes of many in the world, and then you chose to completely pivot and do something very brave and very different." So you're living proof that maybe whatever dream is sitting inside of them could come to life and come to reality, which is, so powerful in itself. I'm sure that you inspire so many people. You've got such a rich story, and I think we could be here for hours continuing to talk if we wanted to be. Are there any closing remarks, any advice, anything that you would love to share with the audience before we finish our conversation?
Yeah, I think everybody's got a talk in them, and I think find that idea worth spreading, that thing that you're really passionate about. And then don't be afraid to go out there and do it. I know public speaking is right up there amongst the top fears of anybody,
Yes.
But really take a second to see if you can connect with people, and it might surprise you. And I think at the very least it will give people something to think about. And I wish everybody every success in finding that idea worth spreading.
Beautiful. And if someone that's listening out there would love to book you to speak, how would they get in contact with you?
My speaking website is afdhelaziz.com, AFDHELAZIZ.com. And you can connect with me there, or you can also find me on LinkedIn. And so, I would love to chat. I love coming and speaking in Australia and around the world. So any opportunity to come and help spread the word would be delightful.
Perfect. Well, we'd love to have you here again. And if you are here again, you'll have to let me know, because I'll have to come and see you. That would be amazing.
Maybe we can go do some stand-up together. That would be fun.
Yeah, I better go practice. I better go sign up to a stand-up place and develop that skill. I think sometimes I make people laugh by default, but I wouldn't say I'm funny. So you can still create humour in your talk without being a comedian or telling jokes. But yes, it's a good challenge. I'll have to have a think about that. I also need to write an album, it seems. I haven't done that either. But learning how to sing properly is on my list. I have sung on stage because I used to do musical theatre, but I still wouldn't call myself a singer. So need to dive into that one a bit
Yeah.
further. It has been such a pleasure talking to you, and wish you well in the future. Hopefully we get to see you in Australia. And for those of you who want to connect, please make sure you do go to LinkedIn or to the address that has been given. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carmen.
All right, here's where you're standing. You can close this episode, think that was fun, and go back to doing things the way you've always done them. Or you can decide you're done being the speaker, the leader that people politely applaud and immediately forget. If you want to create the kind of moments we talked about today, the theatrical, the unforgettable, the profitable, I've put together something that'll change how you think about the stage forever. It's called Beyond the Keynote, Creating Your Illuminated Story. No fluff, no theory, just methodology I use with elite speakers and leaders who are done playing small. Go to illuminatedstory.com/masterclass. And hey, if this episode hit you somewhere, share it, leave a review. It takes 30 seconds and helps more people discover that great speaking isn't magic. It's a game and you can learn to win it. I'm Carmen Sederino. Don't just speak, illuminate. See you next week.